Remember that gray Saturn? Well, I finally sold it. As much fun as I've had with it, I got tired of looking at it, and I did not feel like taking the whole engine out to replace a leaky transmission seal. But more importantly, I needed to make room for the topic of this video. For $800 from a guy up in Watertown, I bought a 1994 Saturn SC2. I consider the first-gen SC2s to be the peak of Saturn design, and I knew that I couldn't pass up on this opportunity. While I'm more of a second-gen kind of person, I've been wanting to get my hands on a first-gen for a while so I could enjoy the early 90s aesthetic. This particular unit is very well decorated in factory options. In fact, it has every single optional upgrade. Aluminum alloy wheels, sunroof, power locks, power windows and mirror, automatic transmission, air conditioning, cruise control, leather interior package, anti-lock brakes, and traction control. The only upgrade that you couldn't get on a coupe from 1994 was the fog lights, which at the time were only available on the SL2s and SC2s. Yet despite this, somebody installed fog lights anyway, so I have every factory option, including the ones that weren't possible on this model. And because it's an SC2, I also get the dual overhead cam engine and pop-up headlights. So what's wrong with it? Luckily, nothing to do with the powertrain. I mean, the engine leaks oil from time to time, but other than that, I specifically made sure not to buy it unless I knew I wouldn't have another Cliff Saturn. The main issue is that the previous owner was a smoker, so the interior smells like a Super 8 motel. I have a lot of deep cleaning to do of carpets and plastic pieces because of this. Otherwise, there's a few odds and ends electrical mysteries, like the bouncy fuel gauge, burned out gauge cluster lights, broken parking brake switch, strange aftermarket speaker system, the fog lights don't actually work, the odometer died a few years ago, and a few other things like that. Body and frame-wise, there's a bit of rust, but I determined that it wouldn't be anything that's too big of a deal. One of the trailing arms snapped itself in half, but I do have a replacement for that. One of the lug nuts is missing from a rear wheel. At first I thought this was just somebody being lazy, but no, the bolt straight up snapped off of the wheel hub. Also, the rear brakes are completely disconnected. When I was taking a look at the rear discs, I noticed that they were rusted over as if they had never been used. I have exactly one replacement trailing arm. It was meant to go in one of my 99 sedans, but I didn't end up needing it. Fortunately, Saturn did not change the length or positioning of these arms between 94 and 99. In fact, I don't think they ever changed them at all. After that, we have a safer suspension system and some scrap metal. Switching to the interior, I took out the front seats, and to no one's surprise, the floor is disgusting. While at least the window tint doesn't take an eternity to remove. The center console thing is all cracked up and held together by a piece of wood, so I will have to source a new one. Once again, further deconstruction revealed more junk. The center vent also suffers from being made of 30-year-old plastic. And now it's time to break out the 7mm socket because we have a front interior to deconstruct. Nearly everything around the gauge cluster and radio and glove box in Saturns is constructed using 7mm screws. Let's see what hides under the steering column. Oh no, another one of these security boxes. The last few Saturns I've worked on have had nonsense like this hidden back here. There was the Ultra Cruise 2 in the gray Saturn and a nearly identical security system in my friend's SC2, which I gotta make a video on at some point. It's stuff like this that explains the presence of these unknown switches. But wait, there's more. Under the hood, I found a mercury tilt switch. I mean, I guess it's part of the security system, but this has got to be the most unreliable and inaccurate way of detecting movement. If I'm going to be ripping out electrical stuff, I better disconnect the battery. If you don't do that, then you're going to surprise yourself when you go to cut a live wire by accident while under the dash. Believe me, I'm speaking from experience. Here they have applied the usual tactic of jamming a wire into a random fuse to obtain 12 volts. All of this spaghetti is what I pulled out, and it turns out the security box is almost exactly the same model as the one I pulled out of the other SC2. One thing I didn't notice before is that these also have some sort of remote engine starting capabilities. I need first-gen specific interior parts, and the only junkyard I know of that has first-gen Saturns would be Ronner's Auto Parts in Wilmer, Minnesota. They have a 1994 SL2 and 95 SC2. The 94 has the sedan body, but it has the same interior parts. The 95 was the first year to have the second-gen interior, but at least it has the first-gen coupe body. I took 2 sun visors, the fuse box doors, and that center vent, but unfortunately the 94's center console was also broken. As I continued pulling apart my interior, I started finding a lot of coins. In fact, after a few minutes of exploration, I found about half of the US Treasury in there. No wonder inflation is getting so high these days. In order to see the full extent of the rust, I had to take the carpet out. This would also make it easier to clean. I wasn't too worried because I had already determined that there was little to no rust. Well... It was so bad that some of the pennies felt the need to become sacrificial anodes. Now I know this looks bad, but it's all floor. None of the structural frame is actually affected. The process will be time-consuming, but installing new sheet metal will be pretty easy. So the speaker system. There was a whole transcontinental telecommunications network hidden under the carpet, and for all of this wiring, neither of the rear speakers were actually connected. Well, one of them was kinda hooked into something, but the signal from the radio never made it back here. I suspect that there used to be a whole amplifier system that was installed in the trunk, but has since been removed. The original Saturn radio connector is still present, luckily, and there is a very messy harness converting this connector to the one on the Pioneer radio. On this adapter, everything is mostly connected one-to-one, except for the rear speaker signals. One branches off and goes into that run that goes to the trunk, and the other is just not connected to anything at all. I was curious to see how the speakers would have originally been installed. I took a look at my 99 and found that the connectors just come down from above. Sure enough, I found the original connectors in the SC hidden in the trunk ceiling. I checked continuity up front and found that these wires are still good, and so I determined that the aftermarket speaker system was totally unnecessary. I cleaned up the adapter and modified it so that the rear speaker signals actually go to the rear speakers. Unfortunately, the connector on the speakers themselves have been lost to time, so I'll need to grab some replacements next time I go to the junkyard. The local expert is the one who deals with these problems. I would have gotten him to work on it sooner, but he's been spending the last few weeks in my garage rebuilding a 350. At the same time, I took all of the plastic pieces inside and washed them with soap and water. I then got a brush attachment for my drill and started working on the carpet. This was after the passenger side holes were patched up. It probably wouldn't last another 30 years, but neither will the car. This is just an act to prolong the life of the vehicle so it can stay on the road a bit longer. Evidently, the front driver's floor was pretty bad too. It was another rectangular section of thin metal, so again the replacement was pretty easy. I want to try splitting this project into parts, so I'm going to end it here. After the floor was sorted out, I reassembled the interior and I've been driving the car around like normal for a little bit. There are still things that I will fix that I want to put in the next few videos, but this is all I'm doing for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.